the stories of entrepreneurs and how they overcame the struggles and challenges to get where they are today. This is Believe in the Entrepreneur with Joel Sandoval, CPA.
Welcome to another episode of Believe in the Entrepreneur, and I'm super excited because I have my tocayo, is what you say in Spanish, Joel Ruiz, in the house, who is based out of LA and drove all the way to Bakersfield to come see me. So Joel, thanks for being part of the show.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So for those that don't know who Joel is, he's I actually met him at an event at Willie Escobar's event down south in LA, where I had the opportunity to speak, talk about how we can help business owners save money in taxes. And little did I know that Joel is in a very similar industry, helping people plan for their retirement through financial services. So it was kind of like we just kind of matched. So it was great to meet you. So Joel, but why don't you start by telling me a little bit about your backstory? I'm sure you weren't a financial advisor the day you were born.
Nope.
So tell me a little bit about how you became who you are today.
Okay, well, I can go all the way back to my early childhood. And even that was a little bit of a struggle growing up. I came from a single parent household in East LA and East Los Angeles, so that wasn't the most ideal setting in the home. But nevertheless, as a young age, I started to really realize pretty quickly that the need for to adapt to situations that were difficult. So we were a single parent, single income, so I didn't have a lot of the luxuries that other kids had. Mm-hmm. So I just started working early. I got my first job, believe it or not, throwing newspapers. Delivering newspapers, for the El Sereno Star. It's a little community that I lived in in Northeast LA. And then from there I went to Carl's Jr. So I was flipping burgers.
Nice.
It's a typical teenage type of job, right?
Right.
So then at that point, I was working, going to high school, did well in high school, and I winded up getting involved with somebody who had the ability to get me a job at Security Pacific Bank. And that was my first introduction into, I would say, the financial sector, the financial world. And I was a teller, and although it was very low entry at the time, but nevertheless, I was dealing with money. Mm-hmm. I was starting to learn a little bit how money works and so forth. Pretty naive to it still. Mm-hmm. And from then, I winded up going to CalFed, California Federal Bank. And none of these banks are even around anymore. Okay. That's how far back it goes. But what winded up happening with CalFed was I started to get involved with the loan side of banking. Mm-hmm. So I was a loan service rep there. Then I went into to become an insurance claims coordinator at that point. So I started to understand insurance now. And that was kind of like my first exposure into insurance. So I'm getting all these little, points from here and there, and throughout this little 3 or 4 year window here that I'm jumping from job to job.
Gotcha.
Throughout this whole process, I'm in college. I'm doing my undergrad at Cal Poly Pomona. Okay. And the funny thing is, I went in as an engineer major, but as a result of being exposed to all these other areas in the financial world, I decided to make a change, and I started to realize, I don't think engineering is going to be the fit for me. Right. So, and that's when I pretty much took off. I started in CalFed, moving up the corporate ladder, even though I was there a short period of time. But I started to realize how the corporate structure worked. Right. And it's political. Right. And I started to see very quickly that there was somebody that was getting paid the same amount of money as I was, but doing not even half the work I was doing. Right. Because we were there for so long. They had some connections. They chummy with, whoever the supervisors were. Right. And so on and so forth. So I already had started to make a plan to leave, but they laid me off before I had a chance to execute my plan. So, wow. Which I'm okay. I was all right with that because I was going to leave anyways. So in that process of planning, I decided to go into real estate. And I started to get my real estate license and start to learn that side of the business. Okay. And right when they let me go, I decided to take that leap of faith. And I just said, I'm going to go in full time as a real estate agent. And that's the first time I would have to say that I was an entrepreneur in a sense for myself. I was self-employed. I don't really call it an entrepreneur yet, but Nevertheless, it was something that I had to make a huge adjustment. And when I say take that leap of faith, because I was used to getting a paycheck,
right?
And every Friday it was going to come, and I was good, right?
Right.
Now that wasn't going to happen. So now everything shifts, and all the effort is on me and my ability to perform.
Right.
And as a real estate agent, it's great. You sell your first home, you get a great commission. You're high, and you're riding high, right? But then what happens? You're unemployed again. You're unemployed until you sell that next one, or whatever the case was. So I started to realize at that point how to budget, how to create a strategic plan to develop, how to market, and so forth. So all of these things are starting to happen when I'm in, and this is, keep in mind, I'm still in my early 20s at this point.
Right.
I'm not even 23.
Oh, wow.
So that's how early in life I'm at.
Gotcha.
Really didn't have much guidance on what to do, how to do all this stuff. So I was kind of just learning on the fly and taking chances and trial and error. So, and I just look back to all the influences in my life growing up, and it all kind of came full circle with just these past, experiences, and where it got me to where I'm at today. So, I credit my mom, for showing me, just the foundational things about life. My uncle Chris, who was a huge, huge influence. He's the one that taught me work ethic. He's the one that taught me how to work hard and do it right. Don't go into a job and just do it halfway. Do it all the way, and that's important because a lot of times people like to take shortcuts, and shortcuts don't give you. You're going to wind up working harder in the end.
Right.
So work hard, work smart,
for sure.
And then at this point, I also have to look back at another huge influence for me, which was my cousin Lisa, because she was the only one in our family that really kind of started to progress and really become successful. So I looked at her as that person I wanted to become.
Gotcha.
So I had all these visions of doing things, inspirations, and I just went in blind, just working hard, trial and error. And I'll say this, I want to say that failure is a prerequisite for success.
Yep.
And I don't care what anybody says. If you're not failing, you're not going through the process the right way. Because you're going to learn from your failures, you're going to become better from it, and you're going to become more efficient in the end.
Right.
So, and that's exactly what started happening for me. And excuse me, from that point forward, I just started to take off. I started purchasing property. I started becoming really, really good at sales, and I started working much more efficiently. And then I got recruited by a company to handle their portfolio.
Okay.
And this company was buying left and right. So I started managing property. I was still purchasing, and I was selling for them. So by this time, I'm in my mid-20s.
Okay.
Going into my late 20s, and riding pretty high.
Right.
Things were going really, really well. And then what started to happen? We had I don't know if you remember, I don't know how old you are, Joel, but this is all happening in the mid-90s.
Okay.
All right.
Gotcha.
Early to mid-90s.
Okay.
There was a part of time there in the 90s where there was what we had somewhat of a bubble kind of situation that we had in 2008. And there were a lot of properties upside down. I don't know if you remember that or not.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we were in the middle of that. And at that point in time, there was a lot of opportunities that came about because of that situation. So I was able to purchase and pick up a lot of different properties. And I had a pretty good, huge portfolio at that point in time. So as I'm riding through this, high, and again, life kind of hits you in certain ways, right? So there was a situation that took place that winded up having to make a huge adjustment for me. And that individual that I was working for had pulled out, and I was left with nothing at that point, because now I was used to getting a salary, I was used to getting commissions and so forth. So I was on easy street.
Right.
And then I had to go all the way back to, all right, wait a minute. Now here I'm back to square one, where now I got to fend for myself again. Right. So that was a wake up call, because it was something that told me that, look, hey, don't take things for granted. You always have to be looking forward, planning for the next step and the next move. So at that point, now we're in our 2000s, and I could start to see property values rise.
Okay.
I'm selling some of my portfolio, making some good, money off of that.
Yeah.
Wishing I held on to it a little longer, but you know how that goes.
Mm-hmm.
Then 2008 hits. But right before 2008, a key thing happens for me, but even actually before that.
Okay.
As I'm in that moment of the early 2000s, I meet this special person who happens to be now my wife. So her name's Sushan, but we call her Susie. So I meet Susie, and that's one of those moments, and you stop and you think there's probably trigger moments, right? There's moments in your life that like, okay, wait a minute. It really pivots and changes your direction, right?
Yep.
Either in a good or a bad way, right? And there's certain things that happen. So that was one of those moments. So I meet Susie, and things start to change for me, because at that point, we started a mortgage company, and she was that one person. When you have your mate, you want to hope and wish for that. That's someone that you could play, pitch and catch with.
Yeah.
They're going in the same direction.
Yeah.
They have the same vision and so forth. And a lot of times that's a struggle, because they may not have that same vision. They may not understand it or whatever. So she comes aboard and starts working with me. And we start to build this mortgage company up from the ground up. And I say from the ground up, literally, we had 0 clients, and we just, all right, here, we're going to open these doors and we're going to do it. I aligned myself with a broker, and we went for it. All right. And in that adjustment there, that was that. Because again, remember, I told you I had that person that I was done.
Right.
And I had to start all over. So this is where she comes into play. And we just start from the ground up. And I would say that was probably one of our harder years, because again, we were starting all over.
Right.
And when you start all over, that's tough. So here we go. And we started building it, and it grew and it grew and it grew. I don't know if you remember those mortgage years from the early 2000s all the way to meltdown, right? I mean, it was crazy.
Yeah.
It was insane. And here we go. We're riding high again. We're on, Easy Street, doing really, really well. And then here comes the bubble.
Right.
2008. And I remember having this conversation with her. And this was in 2007. And I remember telling her, and again, here's now where you start to, you become wiser. You start planning ahead. You have that vision from past experiences. She didn't see this, but I did. Because in the early 90s, we had a similar situation where, properties were upside down. And I said to her, I said, look, this is not going to last. I said, we need to start thinking ahead. We got to have a backup plan, because I see this getting ugly pretty fast here. So that's when we started to look into financial planning.
Gotcha.
Insurance and retirement services. Not to mention, though, the business started getting really ugly at that point. People were doing things that were not, should I say, ethical.
Right.
And we just didn't want to be part of that. And people would come to us to do certain things, and we'd turn it down, and we're like, no, we're good. We're good. So we'd rather not make the money than have to worry about doing something that's not right.
Right.
So at that point, we started to plan and look into another industry, which is where the industry we landed now. So here we go again. The bubble bursts, and everything goes downhill. My broker retires at that point, because he's like, oh, I'm done. I'm not going to deal with this anymore.
Oh, wow.
So now that left us again. Here we are. For me, second time around now.
Right.
All right, starting all over again. But now we're starting all over in a whole different industry. All right. At least I had some background in the other area of real estate. So, but here we go. We put our heads down, started working, and we started doing what we needed to do, learning the business, trial and error, failing, like I said, and going through this process one more time. And I remember our first check we got when we closed, I think it was an insurance deal. And it wasn't a lot of money. I want to say it was somewhere like around $300 or something like that. I mean, it was that small, believe it or not. And then we were so excited about that. And it wasn't that we were excited about the amount of money. that it was, or that it wasn't, rather, because $300. I'm like, you think, okay, what that, that's not going to do much. But what was so exciting about it was that we understood the process worked. We did something, we were able to get compensated for that, and we helped the family.
Right.
So now we said, okay, let's duplicate this. How do we get to duplicate this over and over at a much higher rate with more efficiency? And then that's where we started doing it. Coming through, and now we started strategizing between the both of us. And again, she's such a key component to our business because I play off of her strengths, she plays off of my strengths. So, and I'm not saying that that's always going to be the case for certain people, but in our case, it is, and it works really, really well. So at that point, we just started building it. We were independent agents, then we grew and became #1 top producers, to the point where the agency that we were at, we left with some other partners, and then we formed Legacy. And we became partners, and we just started growing Legacy from that point forward. And then we opened another corporation called JSC, which we grew that. Same line of work, same line of business. And now JSC is one of the top performing agencies for Legacy. Within Legacy. So we kind of manage both sides, and we're still moving forward. We're still growing. We're still doing things. And I look back now, Joel, and I says, man, that $300 check has been, magnified by, 10, 20 times at this point. But again, it took time. It wasn't easy. It was a process, but nevertheless, we stuck to it. And, through the trial and error, the failure being a prerequisite for success, here we are. And we look back today now, and we enjoy the fruits of all of our labor. We have a 10-year-old son, and, I enjoy it. He just turned 11. And, I get to pick him up every day from school if I choose to.
Right.
We get to go on places. I go to his performances at school. I mean, I have these freedoms now and time freedom because of the hard work I put in prior. So at this point, we're just looking forward now to the next steps. So.
Awesome. That's inspired. That's an inspirational story. And I think that, you went through so many like ups and downs throughout your career that you've even kind of learned from your family members, got inspired. And also, you've been through multiple waves, right, in the economy and been able to bounce back from that. And there's so many things that I learned from it, but I want to take it back to, because you said East LA, right? So I could just imagine, like for me, I'm from Watsonville, California, and in Watsonville, there's a big, there's a lot of gang violence. There's a lot of, I remember just, being in school, and there'd literally be people fighting just because they're wearing red colors versus blue colors. And it's like, for me, thankfully, I had a good family. I grew up with both of my parents. I didn't have a single parent like you did. So how did you stay out of trouble from, being surrounded by this kind of like bad environment?
Great question. And you're right, because the environment wasn't too different from what you're speaking of over here in Wattsville, because we did have gang presence, huge gang presence. And I remember that whole red and blue, conflict there. So thankfully, I surrounded myself with peers that weren't in that lifestyle. They came from good families, and unfortunately, I did have some examples in my family that kind of swayed me in another direction. And again, my mother and my uncle, the people that raised me, they would use situations to point out, what the potential problem could be in the future if you go down this route. So as a young person, as a child, I started to realize pretty quickly. I started putting the pieces together. I said, okay, well, if you get involved with this, you're more than likely going to have this problem, and this problem is going to lead to this problem, and so forth. And where's the end result? End result's either in jail or drug addiction or both, or 6 feet under, or maybe in a wheelchair because of some, fight that puts you in there, whatever the situation was. So I really started to understand pretty quickly that that's not the direction I want to go.
Right. So
I started I want to say this because it's important. You can have that guidance as a child, but then when it comes to your teenage years, the peer influence sometimes could be greater than that, that parent upbringing. So thank God I never got involved with anybody that influenced me to the point where I lost sight of what my parents were trying to share with me, and trying to instill in me.
Right.
So I just started aligning myself with those individuals that were going to be more of a positive influence as I was going through my teenage years. And thank God I pulled out of that really, really well. There's one incident, though, that I think that really changed things for me, because I did kind of start going in a bad direction at the early stages of my junior high, 7th grade. And it's a funny thing, because what happened is in the 7th grade, everybody had to take a test. And that test was going to place you in a certain category of classes to set you up for high school.
Okay.
Well, I placed pretty high on this test, and it put me in like these honor classes. So at that point, I started, all my classes were kind of like with nerds. I don't want to call it that, but you know. But it really changed my direction too, because I started hanging out with these people in these classrooms, and you know, they had a much more positive outlook in life. They had a goal of hey, college is the next step. This is where we want to go. So, and that's exactly what ended up happening. So I started at that point to really understand about how to set yourself up for success, because now I was in this position where, okay, right, I want to go to college now. What do I need to do to go to college? All right, I need to take this class, this class, this class, and so forth. So I was really putting myself in a position so that when I did graduate, I had options. And what if I applied, that I had a good chance of success of getting at least 1 or 2 or 3. And, you know, I applied to 5 schools. I got all 5.
Nice.
So I chose Cal Poly as a result of financial situations, but, you know, one of them being USC. And, I hide that. I hold that with high regard, because, you know, I had the brains to get in. You know, just didn't have the financial resources. But, you know, here again, this is where now I like to come back and really help families, because had my mother or whoever had the opportunity to sit with somebody like me, we could have set that up for me, and maybe it would have been a different outcome. But either way, I'm still fine. I'm good where I'm at right now.
Yeah, and I think that's what I love about the power of stories, right? Because you mentioned that as a child, you remember that your family members, your parents, your uncle would give you examples of like bad situations you could be in, and you almost like visualized it, and you're like, this could actually be me. And it was the same thing for me as a kid. I remember my dad saying, hey, he always told me, he's like, hey, once you get to a certain age, whether it's high school or college, like, you're going to be on your own. It is my job right now when you're in elementary or junior high to kind of mold you. But once you become an adult, like, I don't really have that much influence. And so he would give me all these stories of, like, you know, people that ended up in great situations, people who ended up in bad situations. And those stories, like, I still remember them like they were yesterday. And so I think that, you know, I love stories because it really has an influence in your actions and your behaviors. And your parents use that for you to go in the right direction.
Absolutely.
And then more importantly, the second thing I got is also your environment, who you were lucky enough to be into a test good, to be in this classroom with, you know, highly educated or, you know, people who had good grades, essentially. And that influences who you hang out with. That influences your thoughts. That influences, you know, your behaviors. So your environment also has a huge impact. So those two things, you know, can mold who you are. And so and a lot of people don't realize that the environment they're in is affecting them. They don't realize that, you know, how much they could influence their brain and their actions simply by who they're hanging out with.
Absolutely. I mean, your associations are so huge.
Right.
You know, and especially in those, you know, foundational years too.
Yep.
Yeah. But again, too, getting back to that point, it also really also comes down to you as the individual, because you can be in the right environment, right association, but you could still make a poor choice. So, you know, you have to have the ability to understand and make the right choice. And, you know, not every choice is going to be correct, but at least there's some that you should be able to, you know, make that choice pretty easily that you know you're gonna, all right, this is the way I should be going. Some of these choices you should know at least if you've been brought up correctly.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
not the right way to go.
Yeah, whenever you come across this, like, left or right, you know which way to go based on, hopefully your upbringing. But at the end of the day, you're the one that makes that decision.
Yeah, exactly.
And so one of the things I thought was interesting is like, you went through this kind of like bubble in the 90s, then also 2008. And then, but before that you were working in banking, and it's kind of like destiny was in the making, right? It pretty much like you had numbers, but before that you were working at, I think you said Carl's Jr.
Yeah, Carl's Jr.
So how did you get the opportunity to even work at a bank?
Yeah. So the funny thing about how I made that transition, there was a employee that worked there. We were coworkers at Carl's Jr.
Okay.
And he left, and he got a job at Security Pacific. I don't know how he got this job, but he got this job. And then he came back one day because, visiting, having a burger, whatever it is. And we started talking. And he says, hey, what are you doing now? Where did you go? And he says, I'm working at this bank. And he starts talking about how cool it is and, the banking hours, and you got to dress up. And, it's a lot, air conditioning. You're not behind a grill. And I was like, wow, man, this sounds great.
Yeah.
And then I said, well, how could I get a job there? He says, can you hook me up? I asked him. And he says, well, yeah, hold on. Let me see if I can get you in there. And then he comes back about a week later, and he says, fill out this app. So I fill out the app, and he turns it into his supervisor. And sure enough, I get a call. And I guess he threw in a good word for me. He says, yeah, this guy's a hard worker, but something. That was it. And I went into the interview. They liked me, and there I was, like him.
Awesome.
Side by side.
Yeah. Again, so here's another lesson, right? We've already dropped 2 nuggets. Another one is the power of relationships.
Absolutely.
Right. So you had a friendship with someone who had already, their foot in the door in the banking. And because you had that friendship, you got that opportunity to work there as well.
For sure. Yeah.
Which is awesome. And now let's fast forward. Okay. Now you're climbing the corporate ladder, and you decide, you ended up actually getting laid off, but you already had the thoughts of being an entrepreneur. I went through that same stage. I became a CPA, was making 6 figures, and got influenced by entrepreneurial books, personal development books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which I took the leap of faith just like you did. And I went from a 6-figure salary to a 0-figure salary. And that was a huge eye-opening experience for me, which it was similar to you as well. So tell me a little bit about that time where you'd made that leap of faith, even though, it was kind of like almost destiny as well, because you ended up getting laid off. So tell me about, that specific moment.
Yeah. At that point, you could say I got pushed off the cliff, right? Because they let me go.
Yeah.
So it was sink or swim. But, I already had kind of made that conscious decision to do it. And all I was doing was hanging in there. All I wanted to do was hang in there for a couple more months just to save some money and put it on the side, because I knew I was going to wind up having to go on this commission base, so I wasn't going to have the luxury of a check coming in. But obviously that didn't happen, so I just had to go in, put my feet through the fire and run through it. So, and I think that was probably one of the more difficult times of my life, because at that point I really hadn't, I wasn't making the 6 figures, so I didn't have that big drop in income. But nevertheless, I did have responsibilities at that point in time. I remember exactly at that point in time, I had to come back because I was dorming at Cal Poly. I had to come back home because my mom had lost her job. So now there was no income coming in to the household. So I became that person. Now I started working full time. And at that point I said, okay, wait a minute, it's all falling on me now. So one way or another, I have to take care of business, hell or high water, as they say. So that's when I just started again. I aligned myself. I looked at, right, who's the best agent in this office, right? I want to go with you. And I just introduced myself. My broker lined me up with him, and I said, look, I just want to go with you. I actually even shared one of my commissions with him. I said, look, I got my first deal here. I'll share it with you. Just teach me, show me what I need to do in order to learn this whole process. And that's exactly what happened. We closed the deal. We shared the commission. I said, okay, I think I got this. Let me go one more time with you. So second one, I did it again. And then at that point I said, okay, I got it. And then, every now and then I would pick his brain or something like that. But then I started taking off from there. So it's, again, you talk about relationships. And it's important to know people, because at the end of the day, if you align yourself with the people that have the knowledge, you're going to be able to, one, gain that knowledge. Two, in my opinion, is avoid their mistakes that they've already possibly made.
Yep.
All right. And, that is probably the best education that you can have too, because you can make that mistake and they're going to save you from that mistake.
Right.
So, and that is where it started to take off. I started to understand the ability to really catapult my efforts into income. And at that point, once I got it. And I knew what I needed to do. And hard work comes into play too. I mean, I think the biggest problem that people have nowadays is that they're unwilling to put the work in.
Right.
And Kobe Bryant's one of my favorite athletes. And, he talks about these things. He's, people are coming into the gym, his teammates, and he's already been there an hour before. And then they're gone and they go have dinner, and then, they'll come back, they're walking back, to the hotel, and he's in the gym again. You know what I mean? So it's just that work ethic. And, I was, at a young age, I used to do that. I used to cut grass with my uncle. Wow. At the age of 11, 10, 11, and here I'm this little kid pushing a lawnmower. Yeah. But again, it's not that I dislike it. I wanted to help. And I said, and then he used to give me an allowance. So for me, it was a good trade-off. He was teaching me the value of, putting hard work in and getting compensated for it. So I already started to have this concept, all right, work equals money. Now, how efficiently you work is going to determine how quickly and how much money you can have. And that's the next phase where I started to understand. That's what he used to tell me to work smart. Right. He says, don't work with your hands. He says, work with your head, because your body's going to only give you so much, but your mind is always going to be able to give you more. And your mind's going to be able to give you the ability to leverage other areas of hard work that you can go ahead and, remove yourself from and give you time, freedom, and so forth. So, so that's what I started to understand and build from that point forward. Yeah, that's awesome. I actually have a similar story. I got a taste of compensation for money at a very young age. Actually, I grew up, my dad actually is a musician, so he sings, and he was in a band. And one of the band members ended up quitting, I think, when I was like 8 years old. So my dad started putting me in lessons, piano lessons. By the time I was 10 years old, he's like, hey, I want you to be part of the band. Started learning the songs. First, quinceañera, or I think actually it was a wedding. We went to go play. I was just having fun. I was with my dad. We're playing music together. Like there's videos of me like dancing while I'm playing. Like just like literally a 10-year-old. And at the end of the wedding, my dad comes to me and like, hey, here's your compensation. I was like, I wasn't even expecting that. I just was having fun. Now I realize how underpaid I was, but I made the connection between work and money, and that work ethic almost, it kind of like just goes with you as you start your career. But more importantly, there's two other things I got from that as well. Is like whenever you take that leap of faith, like your back was against the wall, like you didn't have another option. Like for me, it was like my employer actually made me upset. I had to run a quick errand on a Friday evening after 5 o'clock. It was only going to take me 30 minutes. And he wrote me a nasty text message saying, hey, never run an errand unless, you finish your assignment first. Like my work comes first. And to me, it seemed like he didn't appreciate my work. So I ended up putting my 2 weeks notice. Next day, he ends up laying me off. So again, almost back against the wall, didn't have a choice. So there's not really a perfect time to take that leap of faith. You just have to do. It's like when you're learning to swim, like you just have to jump in there, and eventually you have someone to help you. Of course, you don't drown. Of course, but you just have to do it. Right. And then the third thing was, a lot of people say, I want to pick your brain, right? Because you found an agent that was, very successful. And they say, hey, Joe, I want to pick your brain. I want to pick your brain. But you realize, like, hey, I need a joint venture with him. Like, hey, I'm willing to give you part of my check. Just teach me what you know. Right. And the people that actually do pick my brain are the ones that approach it in that direction. Right. Say, hey, Joel, well, instead of saying, can I take you to lunch, to say, how much is it to spend an hour with you? Right.
right? Because they understand that your value is worth more than the lunch.
Right. Absolutely.
And it's like, and so that you made that connection at a very young age, like, hey, just show me what you know. I'm willing to split the commission. And that's what allowed you to even, jump even further in your career.
Absolutely. And it amazes me how much people are so reluctant to do that. It's like, you don't understand how valuable, how much that experience, that knowledge cost.
Right.
And how much it's going to cost you on the back end. Because let's say I didn't do that. And let's say I just, all right, let me go ahead and do it all on my own. And I learn it the hard way. Sure, I'm eventually going to get through it. I'm going to learn. But how much money is that going to cost me over time? Mm-hmm. How much time I'm going to waste making mistakes or not knowing what I'm doing, where I could just shortcut that. And again, that's where using your brain, working smart.
Yep.
Because now what you're doing is you're leveraging somebody else's knowledge, somebody else's experiences to shorten that time frame for you so that you can have that platform of success a lot quicker.
Yep.
And to me, it was well worth it. In fact, it was probably even a discount when I stop and think about it, because all the stuff I got out of those transactions were instrumental and huge for me to continue with my success. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's what people, like you said, people are hesitant. They want to keep it all to themselves. And it's like, the more you actually give, the more you receive.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so you have to have that mindset, like, it's only going to help you down the long term.
Absolutely.
So tell me, okay, your real estate, went through these two bubbles. Now you decide to say, hey, you know what, the second time this real estate thing is crashing, why financial services?
Great question. So at that point in time, I started, again, thinking smart, thinking, with a bigger vision. I started to realize in the real estate industry, you're only as good as your last transaction. You get paid, and you get paid well, but that's it. Mm-hmm. You got to continue to have that same, unless you become a broker and you get recruiting agents and so forth. But I wasn't a broker, so I was just an independent agent. And at that point, I started to realize I want to get involved with something that will allow me to get paid over and over again. There's three ways you get paid. You can exchange time for money, mm-hmm. or what I was doing, the self-employed way. You get paid, you do the effort, you get paid a commission. Mm-hmm. But again, that's all still predicated on you doing that effort. So the other way is through residual. Mm-hmm. Right? Do the work once, get paid over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. I said, okay, so that's where I want to be now. So at that point, I started looking at financial services. I started looking at insurance. I started looking at retirement plans. And it gave me the best of both worlds. Because when I wind up setting up a retirement account, for example, I'm going to set them up. I'm helping them save for retirement. But with retirement, that's not a one-time shot in most cases. Mm-hmm. Because let's take your situation. You're pretty young. I'm going to just say you're maybe 35, something like that?
Yep.
All right. So 35, you're going to retire at 65. So that's 30 years between now and 65. So when you start your retirement account, you're going to put money in. Well, I'm going to get paid. I'm going to get paid a commission as that money goes in. But are you going to stop? You're just going to put $500 one month and that's it? No. The goal is to build this as big as you can. Yep. So the following month, it's going to be another $500. Who's getting paid?
Right.
Following month, another $500, so forth. So as you can see, I'm doing the work once, and obviously I'm going to maintain this account with you for sure. But my ability at that point to put in the time is all at the beginning, and I'm just managing it at the end.
Yep.
So, but I'm getting paid every month as you're putting this in. Now, you're one client. What if I get two? Now that's double. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Right now, my wife and I in our agency alone, we have close to 1,000 clients.
Wow.
So do the math. So it starts to add up. But the nice thing is that we are not duplicating that effort every single month 1,000 times. With somebody, we did it once, and it's we're getting the residual income at that point.
Yep.
And this also happens with insurance, depending on the certain products that we offer too. So in our opinion, it winded up being such a better fit for us than real estate because, one, we're helping people in different ways. 2, we're getting a residual income out of it. So, and then, 3, we also have an agency. So we recruit agents in as well. And we teach them, and, we get a little piece of that as well. So that's another area. So I'm getting 1, 2, 3, 4 different ways of getting paid.
Yep.
With this style of business. So for us, that was the direction we wanted to go. So we wanted to start to build something that we can wind up being, having the freedom to pull away and not be so hands-on at one point in time. But we love what we do. I mean, there's no greater value in sharing situations and goals and strategies for people to retire comfortably, which we have done for people. And then on the other side, protecting their assets and so forth with, like life insurance. The day I paid my first life claim was huge. It really changed the way I looked at this business because up until that point, I was operating only on faith. Here, pay your premiums. God forbid, knock on wood, something happens. Then, there's going to be this huge check being delivered to your family. But I never seen it happen. So again, I'm preaching to this family, to this, homeowner or, breadwinner. You need to do this because of these situations. But I had never seen it happen. The day I actually delivered a check and you see the impact on that family, you see the impact on that spouse and the children, and how, that they don't have to worry about that stuff. And it's bad enough losing a loved one.
Right.
You're going to grieve. But now imagine on top of that, worrying about, oh man, where am I going to make the next house payment? Where am I going to, this, that, the financial, drain and strain that comes after that. It's so huge. And I've seen it on the other side. I mean, come on, we grew up in an area that this stuff wasn't really given much thought. And when somebody passes away, what do? Car wash, passing the hat, there's a bucket on, on the street corners. So that's just a bury their loved one. It has nothing to do with what's going to happen after, which is probably even more of a pain than the grieving that they're going to go through.
Yep.
So these types of situations really changed the outlook of how we approached our business.
Right.
And there was another, like you asked, why financial services? Well, those are one of the key factors too.
Awesome. Yeah, I love the residual income is so important. Like for us, we have a lot of people that are on, monthly accounting services where they're paying us every single month to maintain their books, to give them their profit and loss, do quarterly estimates for their business, so that way they don't have any tax surprises. So we're providing a lot of value, but at the same time, we're getting paid every single month, which, gives you the freedom, the flexibility to, like you said, attend your kids' events, if you wanted to.
Sure.
So that subscription-based model is huge, or those recurring payments. I mean, that's huge. But I think what is more important, like you said, when you finally gave that first check to that family that had lost someone, you saw the impact that it had in their life, but it also impacted you. And what I've noticed is that, like, I have a salesperson now on my team, account executive, who he started taking off in sales when he really believed in the product, when he really believed in the service, the value that we're going to provide. It's almost like he's so passionate about why you need this. And I'm sure probably once you gave, like, because you were selling this without just, on faith. And then once you gave that check and you saw the impact, you saw it come into fruition.
Right.
And it's probably, I could imagine, just, made your sales probably go up the roof after that, because now you saw it become reality and you saw the impact that it could have. Now you probably believe more in your product than you did before. Right. And now it's like, you're not going to take almost no for an answer, because you know how important this is.
Yep.
And I think that is so important in sales. Like, you have to believe in your service, your product, more than anybody else. Right. Otherwise, because you have to convey that feeling, that emotion to the buyer. Otherwise, they're gonna sense like, oh, I don't. He's just trying to make a commission.
Right. Exactly.
As opposed to, no, he's actually trying to help me.
Exactly.
So that's awesome that you basically got best of both worlds. You saw the impact. You also saw the recurring revenue. So how many agents do you have now? Let's fast forward to, what is, how big, because you have two corporations, right? You have JSC and LFC.
Yeah, Legacy, full circle.
So you mentioned that JSC is a part of LFC, right?
Right. So Legacy Full Circle is what we'd call the IMO, an independent marketing organization.
Okay.
It's the bigger agency, if you will.
Okay.
And underneath Legacy, we have independent agents and agencies. So when you look at LFC, Legacy, that is the umbrella, if you want to call it that. And then JSC is our own personal, Susie and I, our own personal agency that we have underneath Legacy. So we have ownership under Legacy, and we also have ownership. Well, JSC's 100% ours. So we're a part owner of Legacy.
Got it. So Legacy is almost basically like the broker in a real estate company, and then JSC is the agent, basically.
There you go. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So how many agents are under Legacy?
Oh, well, we're nationwide now.
Wow.
So I would say last count, I think we were up in about 500.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So you guys serve all 50 states, or?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah. And Legacy's been around over 10 years now.
Okay.
And, we've been at the very beginning of that, foundationally building that thing for it. So from day one. And JSC's been around going on 10 years now, 11 years. So
nice.
Yeah. So, it's been a great ride for both sides. And, we're looking forward to the next steps of where we're going to go with this. Yeah.
Nice.
So, yeah, absolutely.
How did you get 500 agents under, obviously that didn't happen overnight. What was the secret sauce to make that happen?
It took 11 years. Yeah. No, it's just, and again, trial and error. We would, at first we started recruiting like greenies and new agents coming in, marketing to those who wanted to get involved with the industry. And we had a training platform and getting them licensed and so forth. And although that was effective and it was working, it was a much slower and difficult process because first you had to get the individual licensed. Okay, so that was step number one. So, and just like with anything else, you get drop off on that. And then once they're licensed, then, now we got to get them out in the field. We got to train them. And that's going to take time. So you got to stop and think for someone who's coming into this industry and they're like, okay, I want to start making money. Well, if they have to get licensed, they could fail that state license a couple of times. So that may take a month, 2 months, 3, 4, whatever long it takes for them to get licensed. Then once they're licensed, we got to get them trained and then submit their first piece of business. Now, with anything else, it doesn't happen overnight. If it's a rollover, that takes time because now one company has to write a check out to the other and it's got to go through suitability. If it's an insurance policy, there's underwriting, so there's an app. There might be blood work needed for the insured or proposed insured, and then they may not get qualified. So this whole process from start to finish could take somewhere between 2 to 3, 4 months, all the way up to 6 to 7, 8 months.
Right.
So in that whole process, that individual is not getting paid.
Right.
So a lot of times, that started happening that, okay, we get them so far, but then, they just couldn't wait any longer and they would go somewhere else. So that was part of the challenge. So at that point, we started to shift our focus and say, okay, well, let's look at seasoned agents. Let's try to recruit agents that are already licensed and already producing agents, agency owners, and let's bring them aboard. So, and what we did is we created a platform, which I'm proud of, under Legacy, that we have the ability to offer a lot more benefits, training, high compensation to attract that agency or that agent over. So the resources that we have available that we have within Legacy, in most cases, are resources that you would have to pay at another agency. Or they just don't give it to you, period. So now what we're doing is we're giving that platform for them to use as a tool in exchange for them coming aboard with us.
Gotcha.
So that started to snowball for us. And that's when we started getting agencies. And within agencies, now we're recruiting not just one agent. Some of these agencies have, 50 agents,
right,
20 agents, and so forth. So that's how it started really kind of exponentially grow. Because at the beginning years, it was, we were growing, but it was, slow. And then all of a sudden we made this shift and it started to take off.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you had this basically offer to agencies that basically made it attractive to come to work basically under Legacy because you're providing them these tools that they probably don't have access to. So that it's going to allow them to make more income, make more money, which is great. So how do you generate leads for agencies? Because most people are focusing on the consumer, but you're focusing more B2B almost. So how do you generate leads for agencies?
Yeah, so that's the other thing too. We've aligned ourselves with certain partnerships that provide leads. Now, here's the situation with leads. There's a lot of companies out there that'll say, oh, we have a lead program. And the lead program is we're sending out a bunch of mailers, and then they're responding or so forth. And then they go out to the individual's home. And the way they bait these individuals to sign up is they'll ask for, they'll give them a free card or a free gift card if they meet with the agent. So what happens in those scenarios is a lot of times they're just there for the card.
Right.
They're not really there for the content. They don't care. All right. Hey, let me just sit through whatever this person has to tell me, and I'll just politely say no, and I get my card, and I'm good.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So that's the kind of lead generation that these other agents were being exposed to. So the leads that we can provide for our agents is there is a cost involved. You know, it's minimal, but nevertheless, it is a solid quality lead. And I use these leads myself personally. So I'm an agent as well under JSC. I still write. I'm still out there because I love what I do. And, you know, these agents, these leads are quality leads that are school district employees, county employees, college employees. These are solid individuals that have, you know, good paying jobs that are seeking out information. All right. And we have aligned ourselves with certain pension systems that we know, the school system pensions. We know CalPERS, CalSTRS, the public municipalities, these pensions. So we're well versed on them. So we train our agents to learn these pensions because a lot of these employees don't understand it. So when we educate them with how their pension works, that opens the door because it shows that there's going to be a shortfall in their pension. They're not going to get 100% in most cases when they retire. So how do we solve for that shortfall? That's through supplemental accounts. Now, they offer supplemental accounts, but we also offer supplemental accounts. So we compare the two and give them options. And a lot of times what winds up happening is we're able to close business on these supplemental accounts. And some of these accounts, I mean, you know, they could be a startup, a couple of $100, or they may have a couple of 100,000 sitting somewhere and they're going to roll them into it.
Wow.
So those are huge differences. But again, you're getting a quality lead for someone that's really truly looking for the information that they're, you know, on their pension, on their retirement, how to maximize that. So, and that's a huge difference. So that's just one area how we help.
Gotcha. And that quality lead comes from a partnership?
A partnership that we've aligned ourselves with, yeah. This is an outside company that this strictly generates leads for us.
Got it. Awesome. Yeah, I think the quality of the leads is important because it almost like the example of the gift card reminds me of the timeshare. Right. It's like you got to, you know, come spend 3 hours with us and we'll give you $200 to spend on food. And I'm just there for the food. I don't really.
Right. Exactly.
I don't really want to buy the timeshare. I'm just there for the reward at the end. So it's like you got to have someone who actually genuinely has an interest in the service that you're going to be offering or the product.
Yeah, exactly. And they're not baiting these individuals with something like that because at the end of the day, they're not getting anything. So they're really just truly seeking out the information that they want about their pension system. So, at the end of the day, we're not turning around and giving them anything. So we're just giving them the information, educating them, and more importantly, educating them on their options. And at the end of the day, it really works out.
Awesome.
Not everyone's going to be a slam dunk, but it works out enough where it makes sense.
Awesome. So you're leveraging relationships again, that partnership that's giving you the quality leads to make sure, even though there's a cost to doing business, and you understand that. But at the end of the day, I think that's where like marketing is very important, right? Because if there's a cost to get a lead, what is the revenue that you're going to generate? How many leads you need to speak to in order to make a sale, and it's all a numbers game at that point.
Absolutely.
And it's like as long as the numbers make sense, why not continue to pay for those leads? Why not continue to feed the partnership, right? If it's making you money.
Yeah, exactly. So and we've seen this situation, at least for me personally. I've seen it where let's say if I have $1,000 cost a month on leads, I'm probably making somewhere between 5 and 8,000 off of those leads.
Nice.
I'd say that's a pretty good return on the investment.
Very good return on investment. Yeah, and I think at that point it's just more of a game of capacity of how much can I contribute into this lead generation machine and be able to generate the revenue, because sometimes you just, even though you could spend more money to double, make 5,000 and make it into 40, you might not have the team members or the capacity to do so.
Yeah, or the time, so there's a price for time.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. So what are you looking forward to now, Joel? I know that you met I know you met your wife and was a big, influence in you, and you guys partnered up and you guys worked together. And I think she's a great compliment to you. Just meeting her for, the little that I know her, you guys seem really nice. You guys work together. You guys, even, generally look like you guys love each other, which is awesome to see that in a marriage. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about what are you guys excited about? What is, in store for the future? You guys have a lot of experience already, but, what are you looking for going forward?
Yeah. So, and just so you have a history of that, we've been working together now 20 years plus.
Wow.
Right? So, I mean, and a lot of people are amazed at that. Like, well, wait a minute, you live with her, you work with her, you go on vacation with her. I mean, how do you guys even do that? Right.
Yeah.
And to me, I can't see myself not doing it, because we work so well together. We've been doing it for so long. To me, it's just it would feel awkward if I didn't. Plus, I get to go to lunch with her too, so that's always a good bonus.
Yeah, nice.
So, and it's funny because we spend so much of our time, in our professions. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And I stop and I think of the couples that work apart. It's like, man, how much time apart are you guys where you guys could be together? So to me, I'm truly blessed in that regard. So, but the fact that we've been through these ups and downs and on relationships, we're not here to talk about relationships, but I just want to point this out because I think it's huge. If you really want to test your relationship, go through some hard times, because that's when you really start to understand and realize, okay, is this going to be the partner for me or is it just someone that's here for the ride until it gets bumpy and then they're gone. So and the beautiful thing about my wife is that we've been through these hard times, and every single time when the dust settled and I'm wiping off the dirt, she's right next to me, and that's huge. So I know whatever endeavor we move forward with, I know she's got my back, I got hers, and we're going to make it successful. So as far as what we're going to be doing next, that's we're building this, and we're building it for a reason. As far as legacy is concerned, we're looking to build this and potentially sell it.
Nice.
So, build it to a certain level, and then we'll start taking on some offers. We already had an offer once. We declined it because we weren't done building yet. So we want to get to a certain point, a certain amount of revenue, and then we'll start looking at potentially selling. So, and then at that point, we still have JSE.
Right.
So this was our fallback. So nice. For us, we love what we do. It's not really labor intense. So, we'll probably still continue to do it, continue to build it. Our son now is coming up the ranks here. So, our vision with JSC was to potentially give it to him and let him take over at some point if he wants to.
Right.
And if he doesn't, then we'll go ahead and see what we want to do with it at that point. But,
right.
But as far as other endeavors, we're always looking. We're entrepreneurs in that regard. We're looking at maybe diversifying now a little bit more. We're looking into maybe some developments
nice.
with real estate. There are also some other areas that we want to, kind of tap into the insurance industry. I think the insurance industry is so huge in other areas that I think there's so much more benefit that we can offer. I stop and I think about situations where there's such a need, but yet there's not the financial ability. And what I've been trying to work on the past couple of years is I want to try and put a platform together, and I'm working on this, and I'm still haven't got it yet, but I'm gonna again, relationships, knowing who you know, and teaming up with the right people. But I'm trying to create a platform where let's say a senior needs insurance, for final expenses or whatever, but they can't afford it. So some way, somehow partnering up with someone that could provide maybe some financial aid to that senior for that purpose. So, and again, that requires a lot more legalities that need to be looked at because of how that would be structured. But I think it's a good fit in the market. I mean, I still think that, when you really look at all these individuals passing away and you see that hat going around and car washes and, again, just to bury, not just to have a decent burial, I'm sure that there's a way that I can create a win-win for both sides. And that's kind of something that's always been on the back of my mind that I want to try and work on and develop. So we'll see. I mean, right now we're doing well. We're doing good and we're building, but it might be something in the future for us there.
That's awesome. I think that like you said, there's still a huge need for life insurance because you drive down the street, there's still hats being passed around, and you're trying to capture more of the market. So continue to build until you can finally come to that exit strategy and see the windfall, which is awesome. I'm looking forward to having you see that as well. But one of the things that I want to ask you about, Joel, real quick before we kind of end this up is you mentioned that you're always you go through the ups and downs with your wife, and the downs are really what build you up. But you're always with her, like you said, 24/7, and you almost see it as an awkward. And for me, it's almost, I love my wife dearly, but obviously she has her responsibilities as far as taking care of the kids. I have my responsibilities of building the business, and that's kind of how it works for us. So how is it like for you? Like you basically never get to like have alone time or time for Joel. Seems like it's always Joel and Susie. So when do you get the chance to or do you not need that?
Great question. And, I actually do get that time.
Okay.
And we give each other that time. So there are situations throughout the year, and they're already planned out in certain situations. I have so many guys trips, if you want to call them that, right? Boys night out, and that's the one thing that I think is also important, because I think a lot of times people forget about themselves, and you do need to have that alone time. So whenever she needs a break, go ahead, head out. She has a really good friend from London that comes into town twice a year. So when she comes in, they have like this girls' weekend, and they go do their thing. And I said, go ahead, don't worry about it. I got our son. Go have fun, clock out, and don't even think about anything else other than having fun.
Nice.
All right. So, and she does the same for me. I'm a huge Raider fan, so I like to go to the Raider game. So I'll take off on a weekend for the Raider game.
Nice.
With the boys, with the guys, and that's my boys trip.
Yeah.
So if one of my friends from school or something like that, or college or high school, hey, let's go grab a beer. Are you free tonight? If I'm free tonight, I'll ask, hey, so-and-so wants to go have a beer. Go ahead, take off. So,
yeah.
And so we have, or vice versa. One of her friends wants to go out and have dinner. Go ahead, go. So, we don't hold each other back in that area, because I think it's important, because, I didn't come into her life at day one. So she had a past, I had a past.
Right.
And, we respect that. And at the end of the day, we trust each other, and that's what matters. And, we also, here's another important point, I think, that's healthy for us, is that we try to at least, every other month, at the very least, once a month, we go on a date night.
Nice.
Just ourselves, because we need to have that alone time too, because our son's going to grow up, and eventually he's going to move on, and it's going to be back to square one, which is us two, which I'm okay with. But I know, what really bothers me sometimes is I see couples stay together for the kids, and they and that may not be the best option.
Right.
I mean, I'm a single parent, the product of a single parent, and I stop and I think, had my parents stood together, how would that outcome would have been for me? Because if it's a toxic environment, if it's a bad environment with them together, that may not have been the best situation for me.
Right.
So in a sense, I'm almost glad that they if it wasn't going to work and they knew that, okay, let's move on, and I didn't have to endure or suffer that environment growing up, and it was a healthier option for me. So I thank them both, and I still have a great relationship with my dad, to this day. So both sides are good.
Yeah.
And to me, I think that was a blessing. So, because those that stay together for the kids, and then all of a sudden, kids move on, and now they're back to each other, and they're, like,
yeah.
And that's not healthy. And then, they kind of, I truly believe that people have a right to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
And if that happiness is not with, that person, then move on, just, accept it, and you be civil about it. You don't have to be crazy or anything like that. Just, hey, it just didn't work out, and that happens. So
that's I think that's a great testimony, because I think most people are like, oh, well, we have to be together for the kids. And you're a great, example of someone that was raised by a single parent that has good values, and you don't necessarily sometimes need both parents at the same household in order to grow up a good child. Because at the end of the day, happiness is what's important, and that you're enjoying life to the fullest. That way you can achieve your dreams, achieve your desires, and really just pursue, whatever it is in life that you want to, and you got to have the support system to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I did. And that's great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So Joel, if someone wants to be part of Legacy, or if they want to maybe buy life insurance or retirement, or have questions, what's the best way that my listeners can get a hold of you?
Yeah, well, my wife handles all of our social media outlets and so forth. So you can reach us at her IG or her social media handle, which is at Susean. And Susean is spelled Suesean, like the name Sue and the name Sean, but put together. So at Susean.
Awesome. So you can reach out to Joel's spouse, dear to his heart, Susie, but spelled Susan or
Susean. Yeah.
Susean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And little backstory to her name. It's actually a French name.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's Suezian.
Oh, wow.
But people slaughter that. So we just say Susean or Susie.
Susean. There we go.
Susean. Yeah.
Susean. Awesome. Yeah. So you can follow his spouse, his wife, Susie, but at Susean, to reach out to Joel for anything life insurance, whether you want to be part of Legacy or if you want to reach out for retirement. That's the best way to get a hold of them. And then she'll be more than glad to connect you with Joel. Other than that, Joel, thank you for being part of the show. It's been a blessing having you on. It's been an honor, and I'm super glad that my listeners got to experience your story.
Absolutely. Thank you again for having me.